Yes, it's that time again for another Capture One tutorial. Today we're going to talk about exporting, different ways to export, how to make it faster, how to make it easier, and some incredible features that Capture One has. Hi everyone, welcome to Pal to Tech, and welcome to lesson number 5 in my ongoing series of Capture One tutorials. Like always, I am picking up right where I left off at the end of lesson number 4. If you've not seen my prior tutorials, please make sure you go and watch those videos because we are going to continue right now building on those concepts. There will be no file downloads for this video. By this point, you should already have some images located either in your Capture One session or in your catalog that you can work with for the lesson. Lastly, Capture One recently upgraded to version number 21. However, this video is going to be using Capture One version 20. Don't worry though, the concepts are identical to both. Also, I will be focusing mostly on exporting for web and social media. While I will point out some specific export options for printing or for using a printing service, that really is the subject for a dedicated video. Let's get started. The very first thing you want to do is make sure that you have your output icon in your toolbar. That is this little gear icon right here. If you don't see it, go ahead and right-click this area and select Add Tool tab and choose Output. While you're at it, also choose Batch. So now here is your Process Recipes icon. Inside of that, you have some various tabs. Now, your tabs may look slightly different than what you see here. If that's the case, and if you're new to Capture One, go ahead and organize the tabs so that it matches exactly what you see right here on the screen. You can add them very easily by right-clicking here and selecting Add Tool, and you will find it right in here. Go ahead and add those now, and then once you have, I think this is the best order to have them in, so you can hold down the left mouse button and move them up and down so that they pretty much match what you see right here. There are two main ways to export images in Capture One. There's the basic export, and then there is Process Recipes. We're going to go over both of them. However, I want you to be aware that most of the time, you should probably use Process Recipes, as you'll see why in a little bit. So for the really fast way to export a file, just hover your mouse right over the file, right-click it, and select Export. And in there you have a choice, either export originals or export what are called variants. Originals means exactly that. The original raw file will be exported. Variants means that you can choose what file type that you want to export. So starting with originals, when you select originals, you'll see a dialog box come up. Right here, you can choose your destination and you can choose a subfolder. And then there's a whole area on naming. I'm not going to get into naming right now. We're going to cover that when we talk about Process Recipes. So in the meantime, the most important area that you need to be concerned with is right here. Include adjustments. You see that? If I do not tick that box and I just click Export Original, then you get the original raw file as if it was straight out of camera. Now, let's say you made some adjustments to your raw file in Capture One, and you happen to have an assistant who has another copy of Capture One. Or maybe you have Capture One on a different computer, and you want to share and move just the image over from one copy of Capture One to another. In that case, you're going to go to Export Originals, but this time you're going to tick the box that says Include Adjustments. I'm going to go ahead and make this photo black and white. This time I'm going to tick the box that says Include Adjustments. I'm going to go ahead and export. And as you can see, when it exported, it still retains the original raw file. However, there is an additional folder that gets exported with it called Capture One, and it's exported right in the same place that the raw file is. That folder, if you open it up, basically contains various settings and system files. They're kind of like XML sidecar files, if you're familiar with what those are from Lightroom, but basically they tell Capture One what adjustments you've made. So here's the thing. If you're going to provide this to someone else who has a copy of Capture One, or if you're going to open it yourself in another copy of Capture One, say you import it into a session or you want to import it into a catalog, you must have both the raw file and this Capture One folder with it. Pretend that this is my assistant's Capture One. We're going to do an import right here, and there it is on my desktop. I'm going to import it right here. Here we go, import image. And if I click on it, there it is with my adjustments ready to go. Now there is a gotcha here, a big gotcha here. If you rename the image between the time you export it and the time it's opened up in another copy of Capture One, you will lose your adjustments. Watch this. Right now, I'm going to rename this, okay? Just to something else. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. If I go to import it, look at that. It blew out all my changes. So because of this, Capture One has another feature that will make this process a bit easier. This time, we're going to tick a box called Pack as EIP or EEP. I don't even know what EEP means, but here's the thing. It is a package container. It's like a box that holds your raw file and all of the adjustments so that you only have one file to deal with. And the good news about that is you can rename it. Let's try it now. We're going to pack as EIP. We're including adjustments, and that include adjustments automatically gets included when you pack as an EIP anyway. I'm going to export it right now, and here is my EIP file. Okay, I just have this one file right here. And for the heck of it, let's rename it as well, just to see if we can throw it off. I'm gonna drag and drop it right in here. Look at that, there it is. The other thing you need to know is that you will see EIP appear in your browser area. You see that right there? Now, if you wanna get to the original raw file and you're already in Capture One, simply right-click this and select Unpack EIP. Look at that. See, it just changed. Now it's a RAW file. We're back to what that was. The next option for a basic export is variants, okay? Variants is very similar to Adobe Lightroom and other programs like Photoshop. So for example, you choose your destination, and then you've got this naming. We're going to go over naming in a bit. Then you've got what they call, it's like a single recipe here. You can change the format to the various things. JPEG, we all know JPEG. Okay, don't need to go over that one. But JPEG Quick Proof. JPEG Quick Proof is kind of weird. That's the preview JPEG that Capture One uses when you're browsing through the various images on your computer. It's a much faster JPEG, but it's better just not to use it. If you're going to export as a JPEG, you're better off choosing regular JPEG and then setting your quality from here. And JPEG XR and JPEG 2000, if you don't know what they are, then don't worry about them. If you do know what they are, then you've got some special use case for them that you don't need this video. So just don't worry about those two. There's special versions of JPEGs that are not readable in every piece of software. Stay away from them unless you have a compelling reason to use them. Then you've got TIFF, DNG, PNG, and the Photoshop as well. So those are there for you. And other things will appear, like if you select TIFF, you can then change that to a 16-bit, and you can alter the compression as well. I'm going to go over all of these in just a minute with recipes. So we'll come back to this because these are identical to recipes. Okay, so that was the first way to export out of Capture One. It's called the basic export, and you could do multiple files with that as well. So for example, if I hold down the Command key on a Mac or the Control key on Windows, I could multi-select a few files just like that, right-click and select Export Originals, and then I would get all of these files exported. Now, let's talk about the primary way to export images out of Capture One. Process recipes. As mentioned, you go right to this icon for process recipes. It looks like a little gear. Now, in the very first panel are your process recipes. Then the next one down is process recipe. Here we arrive at the first point of confusion. You have process recipes and process recipe, okay? They're different. Process recipes, that is a list of your various saved automated ways of exporting images out of Capture One. Process recipe, this area right here, are the details of whatever process recipe you click on. You see that? So if I click on JPEG full size highest quality, I see the details right here. But watch what happens when I click on TIFF. See that? Okay, so that's what that is. It's sort of a details view of the main recipe. That's what process recipe is. And then within that, you have some various categories going across. And just like we saw before, you can choose to include various things and all of that. We'll get to it in a second. Next are two sections that are incredibly confusing. We'll sort them out. Output location and output naming. And lastly, you have a summary of the process. If you happen to ever see that the summary shows a red item, that means there's a problem. In this case, the recipe is a TIFF A3 print. However, if I go to my recipes, I don't have it checked. If I check it, it goes away. You see that? Unchecked, checked. Unchecked, check. And here's a very important thing to know. With your process recipes, if you just select one like that, that won't work. In other words, I have TIFF checked, but I have JPEG full size highest quality not checked, but I have it selected. If I click this process button, it is going to process my image as a TIFF and not as a JPEG. However, if I tick JPEG, now it is going to process both of these. So what you have to keep in mind is that whatever has a tick mark or a check mark in the box, that is what is going to be included when you start processing. That's the recipe that's going to be looked at. However, when you see it highlighted in orange background right there, that means you can edit the information down here. Whatever is highlighted can be edited. And if you make a change, like let's say I change uncompressed to zip, okay, for TIFF, now that I've changed that, if I go back to it, it's saved it. It's permanent, okay? So you can make your changes by selecting the recipe and in editing right here. But don't forget that if you want to use that recipe, you need to tick the box. Otherwise, it won't get included. Now, there are some options right at this icon with the 3 dots right here. If you select that, you can add a recipe, delete one, duplicate one, etc. You can have the sizes of the text right here. And then the rest of this move tool to scrollable area and remove tool. I covered toolbars, tool tabs, icons in the Capture One Lesson 1 video. So if you're unfamiliar with that, go back and watch those videos. I'm not going to go over it again, right? You can also add a recipe by clicking the plus right here and adding a new recipe, and you're good to go. And you can remove one by clicking on the minus. A helpful hint when you're making new recipes is start with one that's as close to the new recipe in terms of settings as possible. So for example, let's say I was making a JPEG, but only 1000 pixels wide. I would click on the JPEG here, 2048, I would click on that. Then I would click and I would hold down the mouse button on this plus, and I would choose that. Boom. Okay, that duplicated this, and then I can just go in here and I could say, JPEG 1000 pixels, right? And then on that one, I can edit this to, instead of 2048, I can make that 1000 pixels. There, done. That's a fast way of duplicating and creating a new recipe. There is an incredible feature in Capture One that allows you to see exactly what the quality is going to look like with the exported file. And you can click on it. It's called proofing. You see this up here? This pair of glasses? Go ahead and click on that, just like that. Now, what happens is, you see how it changed it? It made the image smaller. This image is now 2048 pixels, okay? So now, if I zoom in on it a little bit, right? If I zoom in on it and I change the quality, you can start to see, look at the airplane right here. Look at that area right here. You see that? I'm going to crank the quality all the way to 100. See, it went away. And that same technique applies to sharpening as well. You can sharpen for output, right? You can go over to the Adjustments tab and you can select Output Sharpening for Screen. Let's say you're going to export for Instagram. You say Select Output Sharpening for Screen. Now you can change the sharpening, crank it all the way up. Right? That's too much sharpening. But you can see it so much easier if you use this proofing tool. One thing though, when you're finished, take it out of the proofing tool. It's really easy to forget, and you can then click on other images, right, in your Capture One program. You'll start to edit things and it won't look right. Make sure that when you are done proofing that you disable it. Just like that, and back it goes to the regular size. Now, if you're exporting for Instagram or any real online or web view or display, you're gonna wanna set it to sRGB, okay? Which it pretty much is preset on these JPEGs here. But for example, with TIFF, if I click on A3 print, it's set to Adobe RGB, which is a wider color space for printing. And lastly, you can click on the drop-down menu and there's CMYK choices as well. Next is resolution, and I am here to tell you that you don't need to worry about what's in that box at all. Forget about it. If it's in pixels and it's online, then don't worry about what's here. Leave it at the 300 default, that's fine. Now, important, we get to scale. When you're dealing with cropping, resolution, and scale, you're usually trying to export an image that has a certain aspect ratio. For example, 1:1 square. Resolution DPI is not needed for the web or for screen, so you can leave that at 300. However, if you're outputting your images for print, then you're going to need to factor this into whatever resolution and scale your print service is requiring. Now, fixed exports your image to a specific percent of the original size. And most of the time, you're going to want to leave that at 100% if you choose fixed. If you go above 100%, Capture One is going to upscale your image using interpolation to add more pixels. And you can upscale it about as far as 250%, but you probably don't want to do that a lot of the time. Width and height each allow you to specify a fixed value for either the width or the height of the image. So for example, if you set the width to be 1080 pixels, then Capture One will scale up or down the height of the image automatically. So watch what happens when I change these values. Have a look at the process summary. This is going to be the size of the final exported image. I have it set to 800 right here, and you see there it is right there for my height. If I change this to 1000, look, it changed it to 1000. So whatever value you put for height, it will alter the width. Whatever value you put for width, it will alter the height, and so forth. Next, we come to dimensions. This is you basically telling Capture One that you want your image to fit into a container that's a specific width and a specific height. However, if the values that you set for these dimensions do not match the crop dimensions, then Capture One will automatically adjust the dimension width or height to match what you set in your crop. Let me show you what I mean. So for example, in dimensions, I'm going to say I want this image to be 400 by 400. Okay, that's a perfect square. However, up here in my crop tool, I am going to say I want a 16 by 9 crop. That is definitely not a square crop. Watch what happens right here. If I go to crop, you see that? Look at that. You see how it's in red? Because we've said we want our dimensions to be 400 by 400, but we're trying to crop it at 400 by 225, and that's why it's in red. So you can never really get rid of it because we are using the 16 by 9 crop. A really handy tip to export an image with a specific set of dimensions that's cropped exactly how you like it is to set your dimensions right here. So I want this to be 400 by, you know what, let's make it 400 by 800, okay? So set your dimensions how you want them. And if you try and crop it, it's a mess because you're trying to get rid of the thing and you don't know what to do. It's a pain in the butt. Here's the secret. Go up to the crop tool and select Output Crop. And now you go to crop. Your crop tool now carries the same dimensions as what you put here. So the fastest way I know of doing it, set your scale to dimensions, set your pixel sizes right here, and make sure that your crop tool is set to output. So I would use dimensions if you have to output an image that has to be a specific width and height and ratio. Then we come to long edge and short edge, and these are awesome, especially for something like Instagram. As of early 2021, with Instagram, you have 3 types of dimensions that you can have: a square, a 4:5, or a 1:1 ratio. And if you look carefully here, 1080 for the short side is the same for all of these. The square is 1080 by 1080. The 1:91 is 1080 by 566. That's the landscape. And the 4:5, which is what all the social media consultants say, you know, take up the most screen real estate to get the most likes. That one right here is 1080 by 1350. In other words, they're all 1080 wide. So that's real easy. Just go into short edge and make it 1080. If you do that, every single image you export will have the short edge never go beyond 1080, and the long edge will resize to that. So if it's a square image, it'll resize to 1080 by 1080. If it's a 4:5, you'll get 1080 by 1350 and so forth. So for example, if I wanted to share this image onto Instagram and make my short edge 1080, there's my recipe. Now, if you're exporting to Instagram, make sure that you change your ICC profile to sRGB. Now what I do is I go into the crop tool and I choose that 4:5 format, right? That's this 4:5. You see that right there? I choose the 4:5 format in the crop tool, and now I can crop it exactly as I'd want it to appear in Instagram. And if I click on process, I get this error message. I meant to do that, right? You have to have the process recipe ticked. So I'm gonna go and do that now, okay? I'm gonna tick the process recipe for this, and there we go. So basically one recipe to rule them all for Instagram. The next part of exporting is telling Capture One where you want these files to be exported. And saving your images to a folder on your computer can be made much simpler through the use of tokens. We're going to get into that now as well. So for example, right here under File, you've got Output Location. You see that? When that is selected, it is going to use the values here. These are global values that would apply to all recipes. Let me say that again, it's rather important. Output location, this section right here, whatever you put in there, this is where you want to specify where you normally export images. Let's say you have a regular location on your computer that you normally export your images to. So in this case, I've got a clients folder, and normally I drop my exported images in here. Okay, that is my output folder, my normal output folder. That means that most of the time when I'm using Capture One, that's kind of where I want to be outputting my files to. And the way that I get to it is I leave this alone. I don't even need to have this open, okay? I can close all this out, don't need that. And if I choose output location, the value that I have here will be used, which in this case is my clients folder. But there may be times where you want to override that. Perhaps you make a recipe that is very specific with something like share on Dropbox for social media. In that case, if it's specific to the recipe and not this big global way of doing it, then you change this value to use these other folders, like select folder, and I will choose my desktop in this case, okay? So now I've got my desktop. And right now, even though output location is set destination to my clients folder, it is going to override that for this recipe and save it to my desktop. Do you understand that? Really important. And the other thing you can do is you see this little arrow right here, you can click on that and that will open up a Finder window exactly where the folder is, so you can quickly find it if you don't know where that is. In addition to specifying one main folder, you can also specify subfolders, you know, folders within folders. Those folders could either be typed in, the names right here, in which case they never change, or, and this is the best part of process recipes, they could be based on what are called tokens. Let's say we have this Instagram recipe and we want to save it on our desktop in a subfolder called Instagram. And once you've done that, you will get a folder on your desktop that looks like this, and inside that is your image. But what if we wanted instead to use metadata to create these subfolders? You see these three ellipses right here? You can go ahead and click on it and look at all these choices you have. I am going to use the name of the recipe. So I look for recipe name. There it is. Drag it, drop it right there. Another way that I could get to it is just to start typing it. It kind of, and then select it. It auto fills it in. If I click on that, that's great. Now I have recipe name. Well, what's the name of my recipe? It's Instagram. I'll even call it Instagram is awesome. Okay, that's my recipe name. Now, if I click on process, have a look at this. It created Instagram is awesome on my desktop. And there it is, but it gets better. Let's say I love this picture so much, I'm gonna rate it 5 stars. You see that? I click 5 stars, all right? So instead of recipe name, I'm just gonna call the folder rating is my token. Okay, and I'm going to click just to the right of rating, and I'm going to call it and press space STARS. Okay, now watch what happens when I export. Look at that, 5 stars. Okay, let's ratchet this up a notch. I have these pictures here with various star ratings on them. Okay, I'm going to select all of them. Okay, and here, and what you can do is you can add additional folders. So I'm going to call it, my folder, and then a /. Now on Windows, it's a \. On a Mac, it's a /. Okay, Mac is a /, Windows is a \, but that's how you can add additional levels of folders. All right, so I'm going to have it my folder, rating, and then stars. I'm going to go ahead and click on process. Okay, look at this. It created my folder, right? And let's check the progress. You can click right here and you see that this is the progress icon. You can click on stop to stop the process. Say you screwed something up and you want to stop it, but I'm just going to let it run. Okay, now in my folder, let's see what it did. Have a look at that. Right in here, 3 stars. Those are the photos that are 3 stars. These are the 2-star. Here's my 5-star photos. Pretty cool. Now, another thing that you can do is you can go over under process recipe to watermark. Let's add a watermark. Okay, so we add the watermark. It's a little bit large. All right, we'll turn it down. Let's make it smaller. You can also put an image as well. You can have an image watermark. And grab a logo. Okay, there's my logo. Scale it down. You can have your image on it, whatever or however you want to do it. And that will apply to every single image in the browser in Capture One, okay? If you've got this watermark on here. Another thing you can do is use tokens to actually name the file. Not the folders, but the file name. So right now, these file names are very camera specific. You see that? Output naming is where you specify the name, and you can use tokens, you can use whatever you want, and Capture One defaults to using the token called image name. But you can change, you can do image name dash, you can add another token. Perhaps you want to say the width and the height. Dimensions there, just like that. And you see how it appears right here? Look at that. So there's your dimensions right there. Or you could do this. You could make them like that. Now, when you go ahead and you process it, see that? It can rename it. Okay, this time I'm going to export, but I'm going to have an incrementing counter. That's real easy to do. I have image name here. I'll put a dash, and then I will go ahead and click on the ellipses, and it's the first one right here, 1-digit counter. But it can go more than 1 digit. So I click on that, I make sure it's up here, click OK. You can see a preview of it right here, starting at 506. Let's say I want to start it at 100 and increment by 1, okay? So I click on 1-digit counter, I'm going to have a 3-digit counter, change it to 3 digits. I'm going to go ahead and click on the ellipses right here next to the question mark. I'm going to reset it, okay? But I'm going to set my output counter. I want to start it at 100, okay? And I want to be sure, if I click on the ellipses again, that it increments by 1, and there it is, okay? So there's an image name, 3-digit counter. I'm going to go ahead and click on process. And have a look at this. There they are. You see that? They're incremented by, and you can just name them those numbers. So for example, if I got rid of image name, right? Got rid of that and just kept 3-digit counter. Now if I go to export, now notice that it didn't start at 100. It started at 106. When you do this, you need to be sure that you reset it, okay? See how right now the next one will be 112. If I hit process again, it's gonna start it at 112. If I wanted to reset this, I could simply go here, reset output counter, and it starts back at 0. I could talk about process recipes and tips and tricks and all kinds of stuff for the next 2 hours. I can't do that. We've got to end this video. So I'm just going to tell you a couple more really important things, and then you're out of here, okay? In addition to naming files and using tokens and all of that, there's an adjustments area. If you choose respect crop, that means it's going to export your file with whatever crop that you've made. But if you ever wanted to just export it and not have the crop, then you could simply say ignore crop. Another thing you could do, you see it's grayed out right here, but if I chose, instead of JPEG, let's say I chose Photoshop PSD, now if I go back here, I could choose crop to path. And what that's going to do is create a Photoshop layer that's a path as where your crop is. So you can bring that into Photoshop and see where your crop was. Here you can choose either no more sharpening, sharpening for screen, print, or disable all sharpening. There is a lot more to cover, which is why I'm going to continue with Capture One lesson number 6. Coming soon. In the meantime, you have a homework assignment. I would like you to set up a couple of export recipes, whether it's for Instagram or whether it's for clients or whether it's for personal use or whatever. Have 2 or 3 of them. Now, something that you should be aware of when you are multi-selecting images for export, say like boom, 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 right? Make sure that edit selected is turned on. If it's off like that, you're going to have problems. So make sure that that's turned on. Well, I hope you found the video helpful. And if you did, be sure to give it the like and subscribe. I didn't get a chance to cover everything I wanted to with Capture One with exporting, but I think I got to enough where I can hand it off to you and you can run with it. Experiment with those tokens. Try setting up workflows that work for you. There is a lot of power here in this program. It is awesome. In the meantime, while you're doing that, I'm going to be jumping into working on Capture One lesson number 6. So have a wonderful time playing around with it, and I will see you in another video again real soon. Take care.